Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge and Speaker coming at you today with a topic on big tech partnering with Big Brother to expand their surveillance of us. How you doing today, Speaker?
Oh, not too bad. And I just want to apologize first off with the last couple of posts that I put on our channel, leading to the link of our Australian video that, of course, we couldn't put on YouTube because we talk about subjects that these bastards hate. So I just want to apologize for that. Kind of proves our point. And it kind of leads us into this topic as well. With YouTube kind of censoring these links to outside external sources, making it more difficult for us to even direct you to our other videos and to our other sites because they're not part of the club, part of the big tech club, and they don't play by the same rules as everyone else in Silicon Valley. So I just want to apologize for that first. I did make another post under the last community post I made. That link should work. So if you haven't seen that video on BitChute, please go check that out. That's just on what is going on in Australia at the moment and our lockdowns.
And follow us on BitChute. That's the future.
Please do.
Yes, definitely follow us there because that is the future. YouTube is just the past. So we're here just to be here as long as we can. And we'll keep speaking the truth and bringing information to you guys and our opinions on that information as long as we can. But definitely find us on alt media because that's where we continue to want to expand and grow. All
Yep,
right, so
and
let's
we will continue to yo-yo between the two platforms. There will definitely be topics on BitChute that will be more in depth and definitely more on the topics that these people are trying to silence us on.
Yeah, especially this one. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I mean, we're hosting a podcast about big tech on big tech platforms.
Yeah, that's
So, yeah,
gonna
so
be
I'm just going
interesting.
to read a little bit about this. So, big tech counterterrorism organization shifts focus from Islamic terrorism to far right. So, big tech companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Twitter, Reddit, Verizon, Airbnb, MailChimp. They'll be expanding a project that was used for counterterrorism and now targeting domestic right-wing organizations. So this is big tech partnering essentially with Big Brother to turn terrorist databases on I would imagine nearly half the country, if not more. That's how I'm reading this. What's your take?
This is not uh, just a turn on, like of course, they're going to label it far right because they have to create an enemy, and it has to be a domestic enemy at the moment. If they're moving, or well, not if they are moving to a socialist, communist sort of a country, which is what they want, which is what they're pushing towards. So they have to create an enemy of the other party. And that's what we're seeing now. And it's not just an enemy of the other party, it's the enemy of anyone that is free thinking. It is to make anyone that does not agree with them, does not believe them, or does not support them, they will start tagging you in this as well. And the thing with this is it doesn't stop with the right. That's the thing. And that's what I think the other side doesn't realize yet, because eventually they'll come for us all. Uh, at the moment, Antifa is very useful to them. These organizations are very useful to them. They are the people that are pushing their agendas and they're using. Now, when they run their course, they will turn on Antifa and stuff too, and they will start tagging them with this digital identity. So this doesn't just stop with us, but it starts with us.
Right, right. So my questions are, what is the criteria to determine who is quote unquote a white right-wing extremist, and who's actually making these determinations. If it's some big tech fact checker bureaucrat who's in Silicon Valley, soy boy, Marxist, communist, BLM, Antifa sympathizer, are they going to be reporting to this database? And would they consider pretty much any Trump supporter or anybody who has American pride, who is conservative, to be a right-wing extremist? Let's say they don't support BLM. Does that mean that they're a white supremacist? In the minds of these big tech fact checker armies that are supposedly going to be the ones making these determinations and creating this database?
Oh, 100%.
Right. So it's all perspective. So really, what is the criteria here? And how big is your net that you're casting? My guess is that they're trying to cast a net wide enough to catch more than half the country who voted for Donald Trump in 2020 and may have questions about what happened in that election and may voice those questions on social media. That's what they're trying to stop here.
Well,
And
that was the start. That was the start of this push. That was really the catalyst to all of this, which was a terrible thing in general. I mean, even us that were on the other side, watching it, those that are in the middle and those that are in the right, knew exactly when this happened how bad it was going to be.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then you have high up officials framing the narrative, like, for example, General Milley, conflating white rage and white supremacy with what happened on January 6th. It looks like an intentional setup to entrap Trump supporters into this narrative that we are all extremists, white supremacists, terrorists. I mean, you see this word game here and this conflation. No, these were not patriots. These were not people who had questions about what happened on the 2020 election. These are not people that felt like there was injustices that were not being grievances that they had with the government. They were petitioning the government, and so let's just lump them all into this. Everyone has, white rage, even though, I mean, there was a mixed crowd on January 6th, all walks of life. And so how they're trying to turn this into an issue of white supremacy, white rage.
Just try it. It's just another separation. It's another separation of people.
And
And
the words that they're using, they're terrorists, they're insurrectionists, even though nobody from January 6th that's actually been charged and is in jail right now has even been charged with insurrection. So it's a word game so that they can justify their next moves, because all this whole charade about the committee and everything, it's all a play, we know that, but it's really a pretext that they're trying to set up to justify their next moves, which is what we're seeing right here with big tech's partnership with Big Brother to once again surveil and control and clamp down on any kind of quote unquote wrong think, right?
that's the perfect word for it. Wrong think.
Yeah. And so how would they be able to track everyone? Because, well, first of all, look here. I mean, this was just right after January 6th. They were already starting to create this idea of a need for a social credit system. And kind of start this narrative. And now we see it in full swing. And I think that's where we're at right now. I think this is really all pretext for creating a social credit system like that of China. And if you are posting things on social media that are against the regime, well, we may need to have PayPal, stop your funds, or we may have to shut you off of your social media, all kinds of punishments and reward systems, which is just like China's social credit score. And I wanted to read this, a couple paragraphs off of this here. Um, We all saw big tech and big media collude to hide information to the left and amplify information and narratives damaging to the right. Corporations are now wielding supra-governmental power untethered by even the pretense of constitutional legitimacy, and our government seems entirely powerless to stop them. I would argue that the government wants it this way, that the government is in partnership with them and wants big tech and corporations to have the power so that government doesn't have the liability. They're putting the responsibility on corporations and big tech to do the dirty work. And
Oh,
this,
I 100% agree with you on that because we have to remember a lot of these politicians have a seat in these corporations. They're owners
exactly.
in these corporations. They're getting paid shares in these corporations. They're managers, they're directors, they're silent partners. So yeah, definitely this is a collusion between both state and media.
Yep. And corporations. And this almost is closer to non-governmental social credit system that is employed by communist China, which economically and socially punishes people for wrongthink. It appears that the global oligarchs have decided not only to collude with China's totalitarian control over its society, but to export that social control to formerly free nations, such as the US. And I'd argue that this is really the beginning of that, where they're now creating databases of whoever they deem to be a white nationalist, a right-wing extremist, and
Dissenter.
right, if you're far left, anything right of center is going to seem extreme to you. So that's the problem here. Who's making these judgments and what's the criteria? I would argue that probably more than half the country would fit into their category of what they would believe to be is a right-wing extremist. What would you think?
Yeah, you have to see China as a perfect model uh, for what they want and what they're trying to achieve, but a lot further along the line. So you can connect the dots. America, the US, a lot of Western countries, a little bit harder to implement that because of certain laws that you have put in place a long time ago to protect you from this. So it's been a long journey to try to break them down. But you can see where China is on the scale. If something bad happens to China, so there was floods in China the other day. This is just an example. There was floods in China the other day, and China blamed foreigners for these floods. They blamed other countries for these floods. Now you're seeing this in America, but on not on that larger scale now because China can't blame another opposition party. Now they can blame the world. But in America, they can blame the right, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of comparisons when you look at China's social credit system and how they're implementing it and that slow creep happening here. And I would argue that it's no longer a slow creep. It's no longer covert. It's very overt in your face. And they're just so bold
It's
because they're not going to be challenged.
it's very overt. It's just it hasn't been legalized. It's not part of their laws or in the books yet, but still having massive effects on creators. On I mean, look at what happened to Trump after he lost the election, and you had places like Spotify taking off his merchandise and all of that stuff. Um, which is all seemingly completely illegal to do that, but it doesn't matter because no one was challenging on these facts. So it's just not in the books yet. But in China, it's on the books. The government, have really put out the plan, and it wouldn't surprise me if the American government at the moment sitting there looking at these graphics and they're like, "That's perfect."
Oh
You know,
yeah, Democrats
it's
gotta
exactly
love
what we want.
this. Yeah, total totalitarianism here. So the system is monitoring and regulating people's financial, social, moral, and political behaviors. And they're rewarding people and punishing people based off of those behaviors. Well, how do they do that? They use regular, traditional ways of credit systems like financial or criminal or government records, but they're also adding to that like your work records, your school records, any kind of online activity, whether it's social media history, shopping preferences or history, and they can make punishments and rewards for all of that. And not only that, but they've implemented, a vast video surveillance system where they can use facial recognition to be able to uh, spot you if you're making any kind of violations. And so we should
And
talk about some of these
yeah,
violations.
and you got to remember all those things that you just mentioned, Google has.
Exactly. And that's what this whole green infrastructure bill is really all about. It's really, oh, we're protecting the environment. We're saving the environment by still spending trillions of dollars. No, really what they're doing is designing a way for them to have total surveillance and control over all of society. And once again, it's that you have to give up your privacy for safety. We're going to keep you safe. So, like, if you protest, if you illegally protest against the authority, oh, that's going on your social credit score for sure.
Now we can give examples of that with anyone. I mean, look at Australia in the moment with anti-lockdown protests. All these people are getting tagged, right? So
Right.
there's parallels to this happening now.
Absolutely. Posting anti-government messages on social media. Ooh, yeah, more than half the country would probably fall into that category. It may end up on a database, and hey, maybe eventually that's going to go on my social credit score. So how does that affect us?
How good's the other one on on the opposite side? Praising the government on social media.
Praising the government. Oh, you got to donate your blood too.
Mm,
God knows what they're doing with that. Holy
yeah, I
crap.
know. That's another rabbit hole we'll go into.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what do you get? What are your benefits that you get for being a good citizen with a good social credit score in China? Okay, so they'll give you priority for school admissions and employment, easier access to cash and consumer credit. You can travel easier. You can get free gym access, cheaper public transport, shorter wait times in hospitals. Wow. Wow, your social credit score depends your health in an emergency situation depends, and your care depends on your social credit score.
So if you were a homeless person, let's say, you got no chance of going into hospital at all in any circumstances, they probably wouldn't even let you in the door. You're gone.
Wow. So, what happens? What are your punishments for not obeying the system and having a poor social credit score? Well, they'll deny you licenses and permits to access some social services. You'll be excluded from the ability to travel on flights or high-speed trains, limited access on credit, or maybe limited access to your own money, restricted access to public services, and eligibility for government jobs, no access to private schools, public shaming.
North
Ex-
Korea. Hey,
mm,
hey.
mhm,
Totalitarianism. Welcome.
Reinforcing that group think and that group chastising of one another and demonizing, and we see that a lot lately, by this regime here in America. Whatever stance you take on certain hot button topics, which we're not going to get into, but the number one hot button topic right now, it's putting one group against the other, purposely and publicly shaming one group so as to create that division and that desire to rat out your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I find this one interesting, cheating in online games. Now, I've talked about this before and I will continue to bring it up. There is a big future in online games or online gaming and communities that have created around them. There is mass eyes on this. And uh, as an example, and I did bring this up too before the election, when you had AOC going on platforms like Twitch and playing with, hundreds of thousands and millions of people watching her with some of the biggest streamers in the world. I mean, that's how these people play these things, but they know that this is a big thing and will continue to be a big thing. This is not going away anytime soon, but especially for Asia. Uh, in People have gone to jail in Korea for cheating in certain games or things like that. It is such a big thing for them there, especially at a competitive level.
Wow. So, I mean, this is just way beyond any kind of that we can imagine here in the US, but you can see the slow creep happening, with people getting kicked off already off of social media for having conservative views on specific topics, for people having being not allowed to have access to their PayPal accounts. We've even seen that happen of certain patriots who have PayPal contributors and not being able to access that money. So we've already seen this in play, even though we don't officially have this social credit system in place now, and they're trying to move more towards that. And I would argue this whole partnership between big tech to create a database of pretty much all of the conservative movement or the MAGA movement is moving towards that social credit system.
Yeah, this is something that people like Edge and I and other people that create content of this nature um, identified a while ago that this was a possibility and this could happen. So there is a reason why we stay anonymous. In the way we look, in our appearance, in the content that we make, it is important to us because uh, we saw this coming and knew that if we wanted to continue doing this, even if times get incredibly harder than they are now, even if we do move into a full dystopian future, we can still, you know, pirate radio that shit.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this concept of anonymity on the internet because that's under attack as well. And I want to get into that in a second when we talk about digital identity. But first, I thought this would be interesting to show, which is this video here. And it doesn't matter if you hear the audio very well because there's subtitles. But here he says, here's a dystopian future. This is from 2018. This was pre-COVID, pre everything, so you can only imagine how much worse it is now. But so here's just an example of a dystopian vision of the future, a real announcement I recorded on the Beijing Shanghai bullet train. And so let's listen here.
Dear passengers, people who travel without tickets or behave disorderly or smoke in public areas will be punished according to regulations, and the behavior will be recorded in the individual credit information system. To avoid any negative record of personal credit, please follow the relevant regulations and help with the orders on the train and at the station.
There you go. So there's just one tiny example of millions and millions of them where people's behaviors are monitored and regulated, and there's a punishment and reward system because any kind of violation is recorded on your social credit score.
It's scary. It's a scary future, man.
Speaking of scary futures,
I've seen this firsthand. I used to go back and forth to China. I used to do a lot of business with China until the time when I stopped and refused to start doing business with China and moved into this sort of field and work. But I've seen this, and I remember looking over it and talking to my brother about all these things. And it's a scary thought how it's all the same. It's scary the same. There is a lack of creativity. There is a lack of passion and love. This is like numbers. This is like a military prison camp, except on a city scale.
Right. And that's what they want to implement here, right? With the smart cities.
Exactly. All places are looking exactly the same. Everything designed exactly the same. Having certain things that the government will implement into your house uh, won't be something that will happen yet, but it will. Certain things that you're allowed to keep and have and not have, and uh, that's that's the road to dystopia. That's how it works. Complete government control.
And you can see that even with this green infrastructure bill that they have, they're working on spending trillions of dollars to make everything green, which in reality, it's just putting up surveillance cameras everywhere, putting people in these giant, smart cities like what we're looking at here, or some sort of version of this, dystopian version of this, but same
Now it wouldn't
concept.
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me with the coloration of the buildings. You see how some are black and some are orange and some are, but they're like all very much those three colors. It wouldn't surprise me if those colors are coordinated with your credit scores.
Right, right. So that they can publicly shame you. Oh, you live in the orange building.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Oh, you must be a social outcast, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's where we're moving towards rapidly. It's like they're not even wasting time. We're in the first 7 months of the Biden regime, but they are rapidly trying to move us towards this totalitarian technocracy and building databases with big tech determining who is a right-wing extremist. Really just seems like the beginning of that, and building onto this social credit system. So how are they going to implement this when you think about it? I mean, it seems like such a massive scale project to try to monitor everybody's moves. And, this is where I want to talk about anonymity, because I think what they're going to do is this is where the digital identity comes in, and they're going to say that online anonymity just isn't safe anymore because there's all these terrorists and all these hackers and so much dark money in crypto. So we're going to have to make everything transparent. No, no more anonymity online. So how are we going to do that? Oh, well, here's a good idea. So let's give everybody these QR codes. And so if they want to have access to basically anything, they'll have to use their QR code so that it's no longer anonymous. And so everybody's going to be sacrificing their privacy for this false illusion of safety from these evil hackers and terrorists and all this dark money from crypto, right? And I think that this is going to be connected to everything from your medical information, which we know what's happening on that whole front, and that's a whole other podcast in itself, but that all connects. And then, also your banking information, your social media history. I mean, basically everything. If you want to travel, to work, to go to school, to buy or sell things, and that's an important one if you know your Bible. But to even have access to your bank account, your internet, everything, I think is connected to this digital identity that they're working towards. And it's all for them to have, absolute and total control. And this isn't in theory anymore. Of course, the World Economic Forum has been talking about this and pushing this, but when you actually have Congress writing up bills about digital identity that are in the House currently, it's not in theory anymore. When they're actually starting to build databases too on people and work that in, right?
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy. It's right there in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's everything's dotted there. I mean, the fact that the World Economic Forum's even involved and helping them with this digital identity kind of tells you everything you know. The World Economic Forum, along with the UN, are like Cobra in G.I. Joe or the Foot in Ninja Turtles. They are the bad guys.
Absolutely, they are. Absolutely, they are. But, we have people within our own countries who are in bed with them, and really just it's a global conspiracy. They're all colluding, and it's moving rapidly. I was going to say that all of this ties together. It's not just one thing we need to look at. They're building databases to find right-wing extremists, or they're mandating things in companies now, mandating shots, and or they're it's all connected. The Federal Reserve's actually looking into creating a digital currency. So it's not, you can't look at one piece of information. You have to connect all of these dots and see how it's all timed out, coordinated, and they're working together towards this one goal.
100%. It's just something that we're going to have to consistently speak out for and speak out from. The only way they win this is if they stop people like us, stop people like you. Don't give in to this system. Fight it for everything you have, because once they get to a stage like China is, it's very hard to come back from.
It's going to be hard to come back from where we are now.
Of course.
I do believe that we'll win. I do. I still have hope. I have faith, and I know God's on our side. But this is an evil, a rise of evil and totalitarianism and technocracy that we have never faced before. And it is the fight of our lives. It is the most important fight. It is a hill worth dying on, worth standing for, because if it falls, if let's say America falls into a totalitarian technocracy, the rest of the world falls with it, and you can't recover from that. So we have to make a stand. We have to, in every way, and coordinate as a united group of people in non-compliance. I've never pushed for anything but peaceful non-compliance. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today on Hive Mind. Please be sure to share this podcast. We're on YouTube, BitChute, Pilled.net, and Foxhole. And we'll see you back next time right here on Hive Mind.